this conversation, right? The three things that I'm a big believer in, right, is and you're doing all three, right? One is the capturing the stories and capturing the ambitions of people who've come back to India to build for India and in India, right? I think the second piece is women in tech. It's a very big story, still playing out, still unfolding, still to be told. And I think the third story, we discussed this, right, is about non-tech founders building out large tech companies.
Today we had Naiyya Saggi on the 1947 Rise podcast. Naiyya is the co-founder and board member at the Good Glamm Group. The Good Glamm Group is India's fastest growing and largest content to commerce D2C house of brands. She also founded BabyChakra. BabyChakra is India's most trusted parenting platform. Good Glamm Group is currently valued at $1.2 billion. In this pod, we covered various topics starting from her early years of life, what was her environment like, what shaped her the most, her time in the US, what were the biggest learnings for her, the founding story of BabyChakra, the merger with MyGlamm Group, and the grand vision she and the team holds for MyGlamm, who is she outside of work, and much more. All right. Naiyya, I'm super excited to have you on the 1947 Rise podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shiva. It's amazing to be here.
Love it. And Naiyya, a good starting point would be why don't you walk us through your early life, early years in life, what sort of, shaped you, what was the environment like? And then, we can talk about what made you move to the US and your experience in the US.
Sure. So, my early life is actually a life that was really sort of governed by what my parents chose for me, really, right? I think as any Indian kid, right? So my mom was in the civil services. She was a Bengal cadre officer. So basically, my early life was pretty much spent in Calcutta and in the districts of Bengal, interestingly enough, where I got to see very different aspects of life in India from what I see today in Bombay, or what, most, I think, kids growing up in India at that point in time would have seen. And I think the other thing that really kind of like sort of really set the tone for my early life was always these dinner table conversations where my parents would come back from a very long day at work, and they would only talk about one thing, that if you lead one life, lead a life of impact, right? And that sort of has been the governing principle for me, Shiva,
Yeah.
in whatever I've done in life, right? And I think sort of leading on to that, went on to, was a very bad student actually in high school. Surprisingly enough, I refused to, very stubborn, very stubborn, refused to give my accounts exam because I just didn't like the construct of being so structured and so systematic. And, I hated it. And I refused to give my IC exam. And, in fact, even now, I mean, my parents are like, how did you even pass your class 12? I mean, it was that bad, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, didn't know where I'd go to college. But, National Law School Bangalore, which is one of the top law schools in India, had an entrance exam where which was the main criteria for getting admission. And the cutoff for the high school marks was very low. So I was like, okay, this is great. This is something I can apply to, right? Because I meet the bar at least on the high school
Yeah.
mark. And I gave the entrance exam and I did really well. I came like sixth all over India. So I was like, okay, maybe law is the career for me. Like literally that ad hoc. And went on to law school. And I think that kind of changed my life. Because, for the first time, I was surrounded by such ambitious go-getters, people who were really passionate about
Mhm.
something, right? Whether
Mhm.
it was the law, whether it was about mooting, debating, drama, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Music. And I think that really instilled me, I think the third lesson I had, which is like to have a really deep rooted passion for whatever you do. And then how passion is basically a moniker for excellence.
Mhm.
After law school, I had a job offer with a law firm in London called Clifford Chance, one of the Magic Circle law firms. But McKinsey had come to law school in the meantime, and they made this amazing pitch about working with the government and working with in healthcare and all this other stuff. So I was like, okay, let
Mhm.
me try McKinsey for a year, and I loved what I did there actually. So I joined McKinsey, put my law firm job on deferment, and that started my business career, Shiva.
Mhm.
Right. So when I look back, it was all a very like it was very much like there was no real structure in some sense, but everything kind of seems to fall into place if you just go by this governing principle, which is lead a life of impact and lead a life of passion.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
was mostly governing you. And I, are you more of a intuition driven person?
I am. I definitely am. And the times I've seen when I judge or miss, or I sort of push back my intuition and say, oh, let me just go with logic, is the time when I don't make the best decisions in life. Because I think that is what life is about, right? I mean, you make these decisions not having full information, and that's where your intuition really sort of kicks into play.
Got it. Interesting. And Naya, then later on, you ended up moving to US. You got into Harvard, and then you worked there in consulting. Would love to, learn what was the experience like there.
So, after McKinsey, I think that then there was a pretty standard path, right? And McKinsey did a lot of work in healthcare. And I realized that my passion was to build something really large, really entrepreneurial in healthcare back in India. And I think the pathway was set that I had to do an MBA because, with an undergrad in law, I probably wouldn't have has had as much legitimacy in building a business career for myself,
Yeah.
right? And I'd seen, I think again, like you talk a little bit about the peer set sort of shaping your aspiration, ambition, right? I
Yeah.
mean, think back to Naiyya Saggi in like class 11, class 12, where she's struggling with accounts, and like then her applying to Harvard Business School,
Yeah.
right? I think the peer set in McKinsey kind of framed that ambition and said, why is it not possible? We go there. We've been there. We go to the Harvard, the Whartons, the Stanfords of the world. What stops me from having the same ambition?
Yeah.
Right. So I applied, and I come from a middle class family. I didn't have much savings, so I was very fortunate. I also applied for two scholarships, the Fulbright and the Jane Tata Endowment, and that kind of ensured I could go to Harvard on a paid scholarship. And that also gave me the liberty actually to come back to India and build out my dream of being an entrepreneur, right? So that was my journey. I think, Shiva, you talk a little bit in the beginning of our conversation about your life in the US, right? I think that has been so formative for all of us.
Yeah.
The 2 years I spent in HBS, in the Harvard campus especially, sort of I think the two key things I took away was, one, there is no right way to be a leader. In India, you're taught if you're the loud, dominant person in the room, that's the leader. If you look a certain way, if you're male, there's all these sort of stereotypes on leadership. In that amazing class of 800 people in my entire batch, right? You could see everybody was very strong, extremely passionate, very driven, but they had
Mhm.
different styles of expressing leadership and becoming leaders.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of learning has stayed with me. The second, I think, big learning I got from my Harvard experience, and I say Harvard because my second year, once I was done with the RC, the required curriculum, right? I went crazy. I like signed up for courses across the university because, it's such a gold mine of
Yeah.
learning, right? So the Kennedy School, the School of Public Health, the School of Design, like trying to do some electives at MIT if I could wrangle my way in, like everything, right? Undergrad, some of the smartest kids I met there. I think the second thing I learned was, there is no right answer, and I think that was super important because, so if I again go back, right, lead a life of impact, be driven by passion, there
Mhm.
is no one way of expressing leadership, and then there is no right answer.
Yeah.
Right? I think all of that is still sort of governing how I do what I do today. And
Uh-huh.
I probably will evolve on these principles going forward, but this has really been defining for me.
Got it. And Naya, what was the framework of moving back to India and the founding story of Baby Chakra, and who was the first believer?
So again, back after I graduated from business school, I went on a scholarship, so I didn't really have loans to pay. I had that flexibility, so I said, okay, let me try working in the US for a year because my nana had told me that if you come back to India, you're wasting your life.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, fine, let me just try this out for a year. And then I realized I was not making the most use of my life sitting in the US.
Yeah.
Because, at that point in time, this is 2015, right, Shiva? I'm reading like your story. I'm reading like the Times, HT, everything that's coming to me in some sort of a digital fashion. Talking to friends back home or visiting the US for like on fundraising conversations, etc. And I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And I went back to my original dream, which was, I want to go back to India and build out something in healthcare.
Yeah.
And as I looked around me, I went back to my learnings in McKinsey, Shiva, which was when I'd worked very extensively in healthcare. I'd done a lot of work in public health in particular, and maternal and child health in specific,
Hmm.
where I realized that, working with the Gates Foundation, with the Government of India, etc., I realized that, on the ground, right, the structure of care around pregnancy and parenting was very broken.
Mm-hmm.
And what was solving it, at least at the Anganwadi, the Asha level worker system, was when they were forming communities of care of mothers who were coming together,
Mm-hmm.
exchanging notes, supporting each other in a judgment free zone, and
Mm-hmm.
so, and sort of seeing each other through that life stage and that life journey.
Yeah.
And the second point to it was at the points of critical intervention required, there were experts who were able to preempt and step in,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a doctor or a gynac or, nutritionist could step in
Mm-hmm.
before even the mother knew she needed the care and help the mother out. So this was happening at the ground level. It was a very beautiful working structure,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as I look back at India, I said, but there is nothing like that digitally.
Yeah.
There is no care ecosystem digitally,
Mm-hmm.
right? So today I can order food from anywhere in the world. I can even book Uber, like we could order taxis, but
Yeah.
there is no care ecosystem helping a family at their most critical stage, in their lives, and ensuring that they have the best health outcomes for themselves and
Mm-hmm.
the child to be born. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the genesis of Baby Chakra. I moved back, did a bunch of, I knew no one,
Yeah.
used LinkedIn like voraciously. I cold called and cold emailed everybody. And Shiva, again, similar to what you did, someone told me about this angel network called Mumbai Angels,
Yeah.
right? So I showed up at the Mumbai Angels office. I met Mr. Anil Joshi, who was, heading Mumbai Angels that point in time. Amazing guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, I said, how do I get to know this network?
Yeah.
So he basically said, you know what, we have something called the ABAF, the Asian Angel Business something, right? Forum
Mm-hmm.
coming up. It's going to be a very large conglomeration of angels from all over South Asia coming down. And do you want to think about helping out there? So I was like, okay, what can I do? Can I be an MC?
Yeah.
So he was like, okay, sure. So literally, I sat and I MC'd the entire event.
Yeah.
But it was a great opportunity for me to meet everybody,
Network there. Yeah.
right? And from that, basically, I got to know the Mumbai Angels network well. I got to know my seed investors very well.
Mm-hmm.
And, I met Arihant as well, Arihant Patni, who was one of our first backers
Mm-hmm.
and believers. And that sort of kickstarted my journey in the fundraising space.
Got it. And, I think fast forward to 2021, you had built one of the largest women community, and then you ended up, joining hands with MyGlamm. And now, of course, MyGlamm is, driven through community content and commerce. Would love for you to, Naya, sort of like talk about what's the grand vision that you have and the team has for MyGlamm moving forward.
So, I'll just tell you a little bit about the decision as well, Shiva. It's in fact been captured in a Harvard Business School case. It kind of all comes back to
Yeah.
to where it all started in some sense. But the what I think was super exciting to me about merging with MyGlamm at that point in time was my conversation with Darpan, where he basically shared with me that he'd already seen a journey of content to commerce play out at scale. Right. And at that point in time, I was at Baby Chakra and I was building out and I'd seen this whole sort of digital journey play out beautifully. But I
Mm-hmm.
was like, if I really want to meet my mission of care, I need to be present in a very much more tangible way as well in the
Yeah.
lives of people through products. Right. So I could see his vision of content community commerce and his, I would say, almost belief in it, which very few D2C founders had at that point in time. And
Mm-hmm.
I was coming from a perspective of I know how to build communities, I know how to leverage content, right? I also
Mm-hmm.
know how to build products, but I don't know necessarily how to scale them.
Yeah.
So then when we talked and we chatted and we talked for I think 5 hours, 6 hours the first time we met, right? We realized that, together, and Priyanka had already joined him. So Priyanka, Darpan and I could build out what we hope will be the largest digital first FMCG conglomerate
Mm-hmm.
from India to take
Mm-hmm.
on the world.
Mm-hmm.
That is the aspiration we have. And I think it kind of stems from the fact that growing up in India as kids, right, you kind of had all the international products come in and international was always better,
Mm-hmm.
right? But suddenly I think we have this opportunity before us to change that narrative
Yes.
and to bring our products into the vanity cases, the bathrooms, the homes of
Mm-hmm.
Australians, of people in the UK, people in the US, people in the GCC,
Mm-hmm.
and they using our products, and we using the channels that we know of content and community
Mm-hmm.
and social at scale to
Mm-hmm.
really influence and talk about and evangelize our product proposition, why
Mm-hmm.
we are better, what is our mission, our purpose, what we stand for at scale.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is the broader vision, Shiva. Like really being a digital first FMCG conglomerate, being the FMCG conglomerate of the future.
Love it, love it. And Naya, was it a quick decision for you post that 5 hour meeting?
It was a quick decision for me,
Yeah,
but of course I had, shareholders, I had stakeholders, I had my team, I had to think
yeah,
about a lot of folks involved, right? And I think that took me a few months to get right and to do the right thing by everybody.
yeah.
And once that got done, I think one day I just woke up and I was like, wait, what did I just do? Like you get in this whole motion of things and paperwork and everything. I was like, you just wake up, you're like, okay, what did I just sign up for? And suddenly like you're leading like a 60 to 100 member team to suddenly now being part of a group, and you're suddenly going on this acquisition spree, acquiring 12 companies in the course
Yeah.
of 18 months and integrating the teams and working with the founders and figuring out like this crazy plan that we'd kind of put together like in a conversation is
Mhm.
actually seeing light of day.
Yeah.
And so, I wake up sometimes in the morning, I'm like, okay, what did I just sign up for? And I love it. I'm so grateful for it. But, like these are the moments when you look back, you're like, okay, like that one conversation, that one moment of serendipity, that one moment of intuition.
Yeah.
And, Shiva, at that point in time, again, going back to your question on intuition, I actually had a term sheet from my
Yeah.
internal and some external investors. So I could have continued building on Baby Chakra,
Yeah.
right? But I think it was just, I think the overall, the 1 plus 1 makes 11.
Yeah.
I think that vision was so potent,
Yeah.
and I believed in it, and I wanted to create it.
Yeah.
That made me go this way.
Got it. It's so interesting sometimes you just know, it just clicks. And why I say that is, I had Nitin Jain, he's the co-founder of Off Business. So he was
Mm.
working in UK, and he got introduced to Ashish of the CEO of Off Business, Ashish Mohapatra. So he flew down to India just for one day, just to meet him. They met for 5 hours. The guy moved back to UK, resigned on Sunday, and moved back to India on Monday. And now they have Off Business together. But yeah, it's just
A small world. Ashmo, as I call him, Ashmo and Ruchi are dear friends from my time at McKinsey.
oh
In
wow.
fact, Ashmo was my EM, as we call it,
Yeah.
on my first project with a construction major, and
Yeah.
Ruchi was my EM again in my project with a healthcare client. So.
Got it. And now, from outside, it looks glamorous, right? Building a company at scale. But I guess it's could be the opposite, complete opposite. There's so many ups and downs, emotions that comes with it. In an uncertainty world, while you're building the company, what kind of frameworks that you have that kind of like helps you, go through hard times?
So, what I end up doing, right, Shiva? I take extreme views. I actually take a very, very short term view, especially in times of deep uncertainty, ambiguity, to
Yeah.
say, okay, can I just get through doing what I need to do for the next day, for the next week, and
Hmm.
get my team aligned on why that is important, or help them understand why that might be important? So, I take a very extreme, like short term view, and I take a very long term view.
Yeah.
There is no medium term view in between, right? So
Yeah.
the long term view I will then talk to myself about, or talk to my team or my co-founders about, is this aligned with the broader mission that we have,
Yeah.
right? So it's very extreme views, and I think that helps me because from an operator framework, you literally have to execute on what you need to get done,
Yeah.
right, to make things move, because you can't stop
Hmm.
ever, right?
Yeah.
So I think that piece is super critical from a short term perspective. But from a long term perspective, if you're not moving towards a very clear direction and mission, right, then there's no use picking up momentum in
Yeah.
that direction.
Yeah.
And I think medium term plans, I think they're a little bit like, anyways, flawed. I mean, we know like we've all built out Excel models as analysts
Hmm.
and,
Hmm.
as CEOs, and,
Yeah.
like one number here, one number there, one assumption here, one formula there. I mean, it's all about the execution. It's all about the overall vision where we're heading
Overall
to.
vision. Yeah. Yeah. And now, what's your day like? Walk us through it.
I wake up fairly early in the morning. I wake up at about 5:15, which is early, and not by, of course, Indian tennis player standards early, but early for me. And I try to go to the gym. I think it just like clears up my mind. And I've recently started doing weights as well, and
Hmm.
that makes me feel like I have boundless potential, and
Hmm.
like it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
What it can make you feel that you can do, especially when you sort of see the notches moving
Yeah.
down, right,
Yeah.
on certain weights. And after that, I start my day. I check my I check my mails, check my WhatsApps. I, then in the middle, go to drop off my 4-year-old daughter. She goes to her school bus, so I go to drop her down.
Uh-huh.
And then I start my morning scrum with my team. And then, my day is very, very calendar, Shiva.
Hmm.
And that keeps me sane.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how it works. I also try to, of course, squeeze in some time in the middle for conversations with my team because it's
Uh-huh.
super important to understand how they are feeling, what's going through their heads, how are they thinking about it, and other stakeholders as well,
Hmm.
be it the investors or be it our partners. And that's pretty much how the day goes.
Yeah.
So every day is different, of
Yeah.
course. But I think every day, if I were to sort of summarize it, I think, starts at 5, 5:15, finishes at about 11, 11:15, with like very clear, uh, time with my daughter, time with my husband,
Hmm.
time with my team, time with work, time
Yeah.
with investors and stakeholders.
Got it. And you have a structure going, and do you set alarm, or now it just become a
It's just,
automatic?
you just wake up.
Yeah. And now, anything that you changed, whether in food or fitness, that's sort of like helping you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think going to the gym and having a good trainer
Hmm.
definitely helps, because you just feel guilty also about letting the trainer down, right?
Yeah.
So you definitely show up versus like being, and I think that's the other thing I've really learned about fitness. It's about, that's it's like having a good coach in life in whatever you do, right? So
Yeah.
and having a good buddy. So
Yeah.
I think that's really served me well. I think the second thing that's really served me well is staying off carbs. Which has been very tough. I'm Punjabi, so of
Hmm.
course I love my parathas. I grew up in Calcutta, so of course I love my rice.
Yeah.
But the reality is that you want to be sharp, you want to be focused. Like you have to think about like a high protein diet,
Yeah.
and I think that's definitely helping me a fair bit.
Yeah.
In keeping my energy levels high. I think
Yeah.
the negative, however, Shiva, is I haven't been able to get off my coffee. So
Yeah.
I drink like some 10, 15 cups a day, which is
Ooh.
not great. Yeah, so that's a lot. But, that's my one vice.
Yeah, yeah, got it. Maybe at some point you'll find an alternative. And it's, sort of paradoxical where people think, working out will, make them a little tired, but it's actually the opposite. It gives
Correct.
you energy, right? It just pumps
Absolutely.
you, you're ready to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, what's the most undesirable part of your day?
Uh, Nothing.
Yeah.
Honestly, nothing. I mean, uh, I'm very grateful, Shiva, for what I have going on.
Yeah.
I mean, there is so much exciting stuff going on. I recently actually launched the Good Communities Out of Stealth, which is the fourth vertical of our group. And that just keeps me obsessed because, it kind of goes back to the genesis of Baby Chakra and the belief that community building is so powerful. My personal belief, and our
Mm-hmm.
both belief, is that communities are the future of the internet,
Mm-hmm.
right? And especially in a world which, you're sort of seeing so many of the existing social platforms deplete in value, in trust, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think the answer is to take charge of our users, of our customers ourselves, and really sort of serve them in a way which is much more than just products, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a lot more mission aligned, purpose aligned, connect aligned. Give them the benefit of all the experts. We have 10,000 doctors that are part of our community as well, right? So they connect with the women across like deep interest communities, across localities. We have makeup artists. So give them value and give them a feeling of belonging and
Yeah.
trust beyond just products. So
Uh-huh.
I think that is something that, if you ask me, the worst part of my day is actually perhaps go to sleep sometimes because there's so much to be
I need
done.
more hours to work.
I need more hours. I need more hours.
You
Yeah.
know what? I am super happy for you that you're living such a fulfilled life. Congrats, my friend.
Thank you so much, Shiva. Thank you.
So with this, my co-pilot, he wants to get in. He's been bugging me now, and he's asking Naya, if let's say money and attention are not needed anymore, like it's in human nature, we seek money, we seek fame, you have everything. What would you work on?
I'd still work on building communities.
Yeah.
I really do believe in the power of community building and just the impact it can have at scale in anything we take on as a community. So I'd still work on building communities.
Love it, love it. And Naya, money or power for you?
Power, definitely.
And yeah, and what's your relationship with money?
Um, it's a bit of a love-hate relationship. I love it when I own money. I hate it when money owns me.
Yeah. And Naya, you've had tremendous success as of now, and you've been downplaying it. I was not smart in school and all that, but you're crushing it. Harvard, Fulbright scholarship, and all that stuff. Sixth or seventh rank in law school. With this, how much of your success would you attribute to luck in life?
A lot. A lot. But I would also not downplay the amount of, and I know it, the amount of resilience I have shown. And I think, Shiva, that's not just me. I think, when I look around me, it comes from the family I come from. For my mom to have been, a young IAS officer, a Punjabi girl growing up in Amritsar, moving to Calcutta, when she was probably 25, 26, having had us, right? And, being in situations of riots, being in situations where she's managed, custodial rape victims and their journeys, help them sort of thrive after it, dealt with very, very corrupt politicians. When you sort of see that resilience in your own mom,
Yeah.
you'd be doing yourself a disservice by not really standing up for, you know, playing to your potential.
So mom has been a big inspiration there. And Naya, outside of who you've already worked with, who's that one entrepreneur that you just admire the most and why?
Uh, so, I do admire Falguni a lot for two reasons, right? She started Nykaa when she was so much older.
Yeah.
And contrary to what people believe that, oh, well, you have nothing to lose when you already like, have so much wealth in the family or so much stature, you have a lot more to lose at some level,
Yeah.
right? Because, you're kind of putting yourself out there. And I've had a chance to spend quite a few moments with her. And what I love about her is has been her candor, telling me her journey and the trouble she had in fundraising in the early days. So, I do respect her a lot, Shiva, for what she's built out. And, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think the journey of just sort of seeing her and Advaita and all, sort of ringing the bell at the stock exchange in this beautiful pink sari, like, I was like, wow, the future of like amazing women entrepreneurs is here, like serving women with
Yeah.
these products, right? It was
Yeah.
quite exciting for me to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And Naya, we know you as an entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur, community builder, an investor. What do your friends know you for? Who are you outside of work?
Very goofy. Very goofy. I mean, my friends still can't, like my school friends especially, they just can't believe that I do what I do.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, our conversations with them are always like just completely crazy, full of like laughter. And I think it's interesting, right, Shivan? I think for all of us, perhaps, right? I think at every stage in life, there's a different facet to you that people have sort of experienced, right? So yeah, I think goofy is probably what summarizes it still for my school friends. And I think for my friends from NLS, I think they'd say that I'm probably very driven. So I think that's how they sort of probably see me.
Yeah. Naya, I had so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and making it happen. I really appreciate that.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. And I mean, I've loved your story as well, Shiva. And, I was telling you before we started this conversation, right? The three things that I'm a big, big believer in, right? And you're doing all three, right? One is the, capturing the stories and capturing the ambitions of people who've come back to India to build for India and in India, right? I think the second piece is women in tech. It's a very, very big story, still playing out, still unfolding, still to be told.
Yeah.
And I think the third story, we discussed this, right, is about non-tech founders building out large tech companies,
Large tech companies.
tech-enabled companies, right? So I'm so glad I could do this with you, and I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing. It's an important mission.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Shiva.